Good afternoon, everyone. Could we just please make sure all the microphones are turned off just before we start the IT broadcast before today's meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone to the County Planning Committee on Tuesday the 2nd of June 2026. I am Councillor Scott Woodhouse, Chair of the Committee, and I am chairing today's meeting. The meeting is being broadcasted live through our YouTube channel. Before we commence with today's formal business, I would like to cover some of the housekeeping issues for us to follow. Can I ask everyone to switch off or make silent their mobile phones, and if you have to take a call, please leave the chamber. Please keep microphones switched off at all times unless invited to speak by the chair, and when invited to speak, please switch off microphones nearest to you and introduce yourself. We have a number of officers with us this morning who I will now ask to introduce themselves, starting with Kirsty, sorry.
Kirsty Charlton, Committee Services.
Neil Carter, I'm the solicitor to the committee.
Stephen Reid, I'm the planning manager.
Steve France, Senior Planning Officer, Strategic Team.
Louise Olivier, Senior Planning Officer, Strategic Team.
Callum Harvey, Senior Planning Officer in the Strategic Team.
Alex Puddick, Senior Active Travel Officer, Transport and Contract Services.
David Battensby, Principal Engineer, Highway Development Management.
Steve Pilkington, Strategic Development Manager.
And Graham Blakey, Principal Planning Officer.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the agenda. Do we have any apologies for absence and substitute for members, please?
Councillor Mountford and Councillor Boren's here as substitute.
Thank you. Can anyone have anyone with a declaration of interest for today on any of the meeting, please?
Hi, just declaring an interest on the second agenda, well, the second item for consideration. I note that the City of Durham Trust and the City of Durham Parish Council have both commented on that application. I'm a member of both those organisations, but have had no input into any submission that they've made on that application.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. Councillor Wilkes?
Same applies in relation to the City of Durham Parish, and as Councillor Freeman said, I've had no involvement in that whatsoever.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkes. Can I have a move and a seconder for the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of April 2026, please? Councillor Stevens, thank you. Can I have a seconder? Yeah. And Councillor Bowman, thank you very much. Can I just check for that is agreed as well, please, from the members? Thank you. I'd like to welcome Officer Stephen France to take the stand and produce the first planning application.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First planning application before you today for consideration is an outline planning application for tourism development of up to 140 lodges with ancillary spa, food and retail offerings, landscaping and associated infrastructure with all matters reserved as an outline planning permission on land near Fenhall Lodge, Greencroft Park in Lanchester. The application site is an open countryside, as you can see there, and you can see the nature of the countryside by the amount of contours on the plan there. The irregularly shaped site is in the middle of the screen there, and you can see the surrounding settlements from that image. At the top of the screen, you can see Anfield Plain, where there's a small supermarket at the top of the hill and a range of services. Immediately to the east of the site, you can see Maiden Law, where there's a public house along the residential development. And then down the hill from that, you can see the settlement of Lanchester, which has a conservation area and is a small rural village with an amount of services in its centre. The application site is on open countryside, and one of the crux of the matters today is the countryside is both designated as an area of high landscape value and in the periphery around the development site itself, as you can see from the image on the right, as locally designated parkland. So it's an asset of, it's a non-designated heritage assets, sorry, in heritage terms. Countryside location and the heritage are critical to the determination of this in terms of our assessment. You can see from the aerial image on the right-hand side, and you'll know from your report that the character of the area and of the heritage parkland is derived from the areas of woodland with large areas of open space within them. You can see there's at the top left-hand side of the image there, there's an area of woodland called the Shoulder of Mutton. Large area below that with you can see a woodland area protruding into this. That woodland area is something that's been caused a little bit of excitement of late, in that there's been some recent felling works in the vicinity, and officers were concerned that it consisted of some tree works in those areas. That wasn't in fact the case. We were particularly concerned about that because there is an implication to badgers if that woodland was taken out. The applicant has demonstrated to us that the woodland works, which is separate from the planning application, consisted of the felling of 126 trees, including 28 dead, damaged or trees unsafe or exhibiting ash dieback. Those don't undermine the BNG approaches was a concern at the time, but it was something the report had to cover because it was an emerging thing as it was written. You can see from the site layout, the one on the left is probably the easiest way to look at it. The A691 goes along the bottom of the site. That central spur is where the proposed site entrance is from the A691, and the development would propose a protected right-hand turn if you were minded to approve it as part of the mitigation for highway safety. It would work through a one-way system that would go up through the site and exit right at the very top on the spur on Tower Road, which is the square spur at the top of the site. In terms of the main active travel connection to the village, if this was brought into operation, that would be along the footpath, which is the very long, thin spur that comes southeast from the development area. The proposed development is for 140 lodges. Now, this is indicative, but it has to show the quantum of development that's expected. So that shows up to 140 lodges on the image there. And you can see it's arranged predominantly in the open area. There are some lodges that are sited in the woodland, but between the lodges and the planting around them designed to screen it, officers are concerned, and reflected in your refusal reasons, that the character of the open parkland, the character of the area of high landscape value is harmed. In terms of the views in the wider landscape, as I said on that first image with the contours on the map, this is a steeply sloping land all round, so the site is visible from a number of viewpoints, both below from the 691 or in longer distance views such as this one from the Roman fort above Lanchester at Longavigium. You can see the woodland areas in between the bracketed arrows on there, and areas of open space within it. This is an image taken in summer last year, and obviously the effect of developing in the open areas, particularly once the landscaping takes effect, would have a lesser effect in winter. For the photographic images, top left shows the proposed access adjacent New Houses Farm off the A691, where significant highway works would allow for a safe, protected right turn into the site when approaching from Lanchester and from the Durham end, which is where the main volume of traffic could be expected to come from. There's obviously plenty of space in the verge there. And as part of the active travel offer on this, there would be a footpath that would go from that entrance along the north side of the A691, along the front of St Bede's Comprehensive School back into the village, in addition to that other access from the site that I mentioned before. The image at the top right is the egress at the top of the site onto Tower Road. Your report has assessed that there's a residential amenity issue to address there because of a traveller site which is directly opposite the entrance there. And this is a road that serves the back of Greencroft Industrial Estate and some of the significant employers, including Lanchester Wines, who are here to speak to you today. Highways officers, in light of the improvements on the 691 and the level of traffic on the Tower Road at the top, have no objection to the scheme, subject to conditions to secure the improvements required for safety. The bottom two images show the nature of the parkland as much as anything, just to give you a flavour of the site and its surroundings. And you can see the meadowland there, the blocks of trees, both significant and small areas of trees. These are taken from the footpath 8 as existing, which is going to be partially used by the development if approved. And you can see there's a decent separation between the bottom right image and the new development built on the old hospital site where the palliative care at Willoughburn Hospice, which is mentioned in your report, is cited. In terms of some of the structures on the estate, there are 4 listed buildings left on the development. The original manor house was lost after the army vacated it, I think in the 1950s, having used it in the war. But there are still areas of the estate, such as the walled garden, which is the bottom right image, where you can see the walls, which is designed to be cleared and replicated as part of the development, so it's better be able to be appreciated. Top 3 images are a dovecote, an ice house, and a listed bridge. And again, those would be exposed, and the appreciation of the listed buildings would be both better appreciated in their own right, and the applicant has suggested uses for them, such as wine and whiskey taking for the 2 images with the doorways there. At the bottom, the middle image is the footpath bridge that takes you across to footpath 8 and the proposed main active travel link to the village and to the bus stops on Howden Bank, which could be improved as well as part of the offer here. Bottom left is a ruined farmhouse that's on the land. In terms of the representations, the statutory consultees have no objection to this in terms of the headlines for Northumbrian Water, the Highways Authority and the Coal Authority and the like. The majority of the internal consultees likewise have no objection. There is an asterisk there next to design and conservation in that effectively when it comes into heritage landscape issues, they defer to the county landscape officer. And the county landscape officer, as you can see from the third point, is one of the objectors to the proposals. In terms of people who have made a specific either positive or negative, so Visit County Durham support the proposals and the benefits that this will bring to the county visitor offer and the county visitor economy, and that's replicated in the planning balance. Significant weight is given to that. But like I say, there's objections from the county landscape officer due to the harm on the area of high landscape value and the heritage parkland. And from the county ecologist, the application's been presented to us without enough information for us to be able to ascertain the effects on species protected by law. Now, there's some of the aspects of this in terms of the bats, which is there's been a little bit of activity at the end of the process, and for newts, where between the controls we have and the licensing regime that Natural England undertake, we feel the effects can be acceptable. But the extent of the badger survey work, and particularly with regard to foraging, with some of the badger sets that are known to be on the site completely surrounded on 3 sides by development, as such that following the legislation and the guidance in the PPG, we don't think we have enough information to be able to recommend positive to you. And I have to say, we don't think we've got enough information for a decision to be made positively today, but we can discuss that as we go along. In terms of the other external consultees, the Integrated Care Board have no requirements on this. While this is a large development, because it's a transient population, the NHS have not asked for any funds on it. There have been 29 public representations. These include objections from the MP, from Greencroft and Lanchester Parish Councils. Lanchester Parish Council is here to speak to you today, I believe. From the Countryside Charity, the CPRE, and from the Campaign for the Protection of Rural Lanchester. You can see a list of the objections there. I won't go through them. I'm sure you've read them in your report and in the detail in the executive summary. But they do include some of the areas that officers have concern about too. Skipped. The proposal, in summary, is 140 holiday lodges on protected land, protected in two regimes. The open areas of the site are what gives the character of the countryside and the value of the historic parkland, their designations, and it's for those reasons that we have significant concerns about those aspects, to the point where those are framed in refusal reasons. We have assessed in detail and looked at the economic benefits that are presented here. We don't take lightly an offered level of investment in the county lightly in terms of recommending refusal for this, but there are some aspects of the scheme, both in terms of the harms to those areas and in terms of the requirements of Policy 8, which says you have to specifically justify why you need to be in a location. And that's a macro determination on this, because the open area is what determines the value of the historic and the parkland, and the open area is what is proposed for here. I have to say, landscape officers are of the opinion there is potentially in the immediate area, possibly into the woodland and overspilling into surrounding land, which is within the applicant's control, the potential for an acceptable scheme, but that hasn't been examined. Like I said, the other consultees and the other topic areas we've worked through in detail, and as you can see through your report, there's a list of areas that we feel we could happily condition or secure by Section 106 legal agreements if you were minded to approve this. But effectively, between the concerns for the use of the open spaces and that the Badger survey work hasn't been investigated to a degree which would allow us to properly assess it and properly assess the implications of those protected species, and in particular their foraging, I'm afraid the conclusion is that whilst the refusal is not in principle, we think there is potentially a viable scheme here. As presented, the effects on parkland, the effects on the area of high landscape value, and the lack of demonstration for a functional need in the specific areas of open space on this site proposed are such that we have recommended refusal for you. There's a lack of survey work for the badgers. It was initially thought, as the report was written, that this was exacerbating the badger issue. The area of trees we were most concerned about hasn't in fact been touched, and that's been clarified with the help of the applicant. I'll leave the aerial image on the screen for you. I'm happy to answer any question, or if you'd like to return to any of the slides, please don't hesitate. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Steve. We have a number of speakers booked in today. In order, the speakers will be the Parish Town Councillor, local members, objectors and supporters. Each will have different amounts of time to speak. So I'd like to ask the Parish Town Councillor, David Smith. Just to remind you, please, you have 5 minutes to speak on this, and crack on, please.
Thank you. As I say, my name is David Smith. I'm one of the independent members of Lanchester Parish Council, elected by the people of Lanchester to represent them on local issues. As independents, we have the advantage of not being restricted by national politics or party-specific policies. We are free to say what the people of Lanchester tell us. In this case, local opinion is overwhelming against the proposed development. And as a council, we strongly support the recommendation of the planning officer to refuse this application. I'd also like to say we're not against developments in the countryside per se. We have supported Lanchester Wines, Lanchester Dairies, and the caravan development at Long Edge Lane when it proposed chalets for people with special needs. The statement from the proposer mentions engagement with the local community. What it doesn't say is that at the local meetings, the response was almost universally against the proposed development. This was not simply a case of NIMBYism, but a considered response which said, we don't feel that this is an appropriate development in the area chosen. It is a major development in an area of high landscape value, which will cause considerable harm to the setting, character, and value of the local landscape. We do not feel that this is a sustainable development. Durham County Council has identified the lack of public transport linked to this area, and the claim that people will cycle to local amenities and attractions is unrealistic, as demonstrated by the figures included in our report. We feel that a significant additional car use will contribute to congestion on this A691. At peak times, we already experience difficulties with school traffic, and we feel the development will exacerbate parking difficulties within Lanchester, and it's highly likely most visitors will want to visit the cafes and restaurants. The Parish Council has submitted a substantial report which supports the recommendation of the planning officer to refuse this application, which you can read if you require further support for this recommendation. It's about 30 pages long, but I certainly won't go into that now. One point from the planning officer's report which we would take issue with is a statement that the Lanchester Neighbourhood Plan is not materially relevant. We feel that there are aspects of the Lanchester Neighbourhood Plan, content and policies, which are relevant and valid in relation to this development, given the site's very close proximity to our parish and the Greencroft parish adjoins Lanchester Parish. Councillors feel the application is not acceptable and not appropriate for this location, and the Parish Council objects to this application. The development site, as proposed on the Greencroft estate, is not considered suitable or safe. It does not represent sustainable tourism development, and it does not deliver transport sustainability. There is no locational need for the development. Lanchester Parish Council has serious concerns and feel there are several very significant grounds and reasons as to why the principle of development for this application should be refused. The development is in contravention of several policies detailed in the County Durham Plan as described in our full submission. In summary, I would just like to say that both the Planning Officer's report and the submission from Lanchester Parish Council provide reasons backed by strong evidence for the rejection of this application. And as a final note, what I can say is, reading through the Planning Officer's report, it talks about the harm done by this proposal on 24 occasions. Thank you.
Thank you for that, David. I'd like to ask both the local members, Councillor Darren Grimes and Councillor Karen Allison, to present your statements, please. I'll remind you, we have got unlimited time, but could we please keep it down to the minimum due to the amount of speakers we have today? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I speak, of course, as a member for Anfield Plain and Tanfield alongside my colleague. The facts before us are pretty easy to walk through. If you start with the economics, they're material and they're substantial. Around 2.1 million a year projected as visitor spend, roughly 73,000 a year in business rates, over 160 jobs in construction, and at least 44 permanent roles. 2/3 of the construction work going to people who would live in the area and very much welcome the opportunity. This is a part of Durham that seems to lose more than it gains. And Anfield Plain, which was mentioned within the report there, could benefit greatly from greater opportunity. The benefits are real and the benefits are local. And this isn't my opinion against the officers here. Visit County Durham, as was mentioned, this authority's own tourism body, support the application. They tell us that the county is behind its competitors on visitor accommodation and that this undersupply is holding back our economic growth. I think that speaks directly to the question of need. On the technical objections, there have been a lot of, as I understand it, resolutions with highways, resolutions with flooding, resolutions with the drainage, the noise, the air quality, the contamination, the rights of way. I could go on and so forth. On heritage, the officer's own findings is that a less than substantial harm at the low end of the scale, and against that this scheme repairs, as was mentioned, the Dovecote, the ice house, the bridge, which, by the way, as someone that brought up in that area, I had no idea these things were there. How beautiful to be able to champion and display parts of our heritage. And the alternative to the development, I think, is to not preserve, but to actually continue decay. And I accept that the landscape carries weight, but the county's own assessment rates it as medium value, and that the harm reduces over time as the planting actually matures. So ultimately, I would say the benefits outweigh the harm. And I'd ask members to give proper weight to what the scheme actually does deliver, which would be jobs, investment, and a rescued heritage in a beautiful part of the world and in an area that needs all three. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Karen Allison again, along with Darren. I am the Anfield Plain and Tanfield ward. I would just like to echo what Darren said. It's much needed in Anfield Plain. The deprivation in Anfield Plain is nearly at 40%. And the thought of 44 permanent jobs, the amount of families that could possibly bring them out of the benefit trap, I just think is just immense. There is something that was mentioned, and that was about the traffic, the potential parking issues and things like that, the commuting. So we've recently launched the tourist buses, which travel to Beamish and Bishop and all over, and we could potentially add this development as a stop for the tourist buses, meaning there isn't as many cars on the road. this is something that's in development at the moment. It's only just been released. The tourist buses have only just been launched. But all of these things just add up to, I think, making it a really good development. So the beds in County Durham, only 8% of people stay in County Durham. And there's 21 million people that visit County Durham, only 8% stay because there's a lack of beds. The lack of beds, there's 17,800 beds in the whole of County Durham, and this is much needed. And I would support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, councillors. I'd like to ask Leslie Johnson from the Durham Badger Group and Chris Smith from Lanchester Wines to speak now. Just a reminder, you have 5 minutes between the both of you, so about 2.5 minutes each. Thank you.
Understood. Hi, I'm speaking on behalf of Lanchester Group, based on Greencroft Industrial Estate. It's just off the north of that image there on Tower Road. We employ 400 people at the Greencroft site. Many of our employees live within Lanchester and the surrounding communities. We're not just neighbouring landowners, we are long-term investors in the area, major local employers and people with direct interest in this landscape. We support the planning officer's recommendation for refusal. The principal reason is the one already outlined by the professional officer regarding the sensitive landscape causing harm to the openness and the historic character. However, there are additional concerns. As you may be aware, there's an adjacent woodland creation proposal covering 920 hectares. It's one of the largest schemes since the 1980s. That adjacent scheme is currently sitting at the High Court under judicial review today as we speak. As part of our challenge against the forest, we've commissioned various reports on landscape, ecology, biodiversity, and we feel like there's a lot of issues that are being overlooked, which affects both developments on the site. Due to the ongoing legal proceedings, the wider landscape context surrounding the application remains uncertain and it's actively contested. That uncertainty matters because this woodland creation and lodge development are clearly interconnected. We are considering the application of a forest park that may or may not be surrounded by a forest. Both proposals jointly influence the landscape character, the visual impact and ecology. It's our view that the committee should therefore be cautious about treating the lodge as a standalone proposal. It is important to note the initial proposal for the site was to plant it with Sitka spruce. This was removed from plans relating to priority habitats, ecology, landscape sensitivity and the historic environment of the parkland. This raises an important question. If this area was deemed sufficiently sensitive to prevent commercial forestry planning, why is the area now considered suitable for roads, lodges, restaurants, spas, markets, etc.? The application you decide upon today relies heavily on woodland enhancement, habitat creation and landscape screening, yet the surrounding estate is to be actively managed as a commercial forest and machine-felled in regular intervals. Ultimately, the proposal represents part of a much wider and ongoing transformation of a sensitive area. For reasons identified by our officers and because of the wider uncertainty surrounding the woodland, we ask the committee to support the recommendation for refusal. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Leslie Johnson. I'm a representative of Durham County Badger Group, a group of conservation volunteers who work to protect badgers in the county. The badger population at Greencroft is exceptional, the result most likely of the estate being undisturbed for so long and therefore an asset. And important as badgers are deliberately attacked in the surrounding areas of the site, for example. It is rare for the Badger Group to object outright to a planning application. Normally, we look to identify sufficient appropriate mitigation with an application to protect badgers. However, this case is different as the applicant has twice chosen to ignore the advice of their own ecological consultants in 2024 and 2025 and made no effort to protect badgers on site, seeking to maximise development whilst ignoring protected species legislation. Badgers, their sets and foraging are protected, and construction of lodges near sets and the subsequent disturbance caused by occupants of the lodges constitutes a threat. We agree with the advice from the county ecologist about the density of the lodges near badger sets, noting any subsequent adjustment on layout and yield being inappropriate to be determined under reserved matters. Effectively, planning permission cannot be granted until the further advised surveys have been carried out and the impacts on badgers and other species have been properly assessed. As it stands, the application may not be deliverable. The application is contrary to para 43 of the county plan and part 15 of the National Planning Framework, both of which seek to retain and enhance wildlife within the planning process, and also contrary to protected species legislation. In conclusion, the applicant knew badgers were on site from at least 2024, and they have chosen to ignore professional advice from 2 separate specialists. The development is destructive, and the Badger Group is of the opinion that as the need for further badger surveys has been known since 2024 and the applicant has not carried them out, then refusal of the application is the correct outcome and nothing left for reserved matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie and Chris. I'd like to ask Michelle Robinson, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and members. This is a genuinely exciting proposal before you today, one that goes well beyond a typical planning application. It is an opportunity to secure the future of a remarkable but declining historic estate, unlock significant tourism and economic potential, and deliver long-lasting public benefits for County Durham. As mentioned, my name is Michelle Robinson and I'm speaking on the behalf of the applicant, True North. We have been progressing proposals for the redevelopment of the Greencroft estate since December 2022. This is a rare opportunity to restore a previously private historic estate which has fallen into disrepair and to bring it back into meaningful and sustainable use for public benefit. We have engaged consistently and proactively with officers and local communities throughout, from pre-application discussions back in 2023, having held consultation events both in Lanchester Parish and notably within Anfield Plain, to the planning application submission in summer 2024. The application has now been with the authority for 2 years. As acknowledged within the officer's report, this is not an in-principle refusal, and there is clearly the potential for an acceptable scheme, and we remain fully committed to refining the details at the reserve matters stage if approved. The economic case for this scheme is both clear and significant, as set out in paragraphs 222 to 231 within the officer's report. We've already heard that during construction, the development is expected to generate around 120 direct jobs and 46 indirect jobs, contributing approximately £7.1 million in gross value added to the local economy. Once operational, it will also support around 33 full-time equivalent jobs, generating approximately £700,000 annually, alongside further indirect benefits across the wider economy. These jobs are anticipated to be largely sourced from local workforce, supported by targeted recruitment. As indicated by the local members, this is significant both for Anfield Plain and for Tanfield. It will also contribute around £73,000 per year in business rates, helping to support local services. Importantly, and as highlighted by Visit County Durham, the county has a clear and evidence shortage of overnight visitor accommodation. This is a recognised constraint on growth and one that places the county at a disadvantage compared to neighbouring areas. The proposal directly addresses that need. Opportunities of this scale, being in single ownership of this site of this quality, are exceptionally rare. We therefore begin from a clearly positive position where both the need and the benefits are firmly established. Turning to heritage, officers identify moderate harm to a non-designated parking garden. That harm has been carefully considered and reduced through the design evolution. Critically, this scheme delivers substantial public benefits which must be weighed in the balance. This development will restore and reuse heritage assets, including the Grade 2 listed Ice House in Dovecot, secure the future of listed buildings currently at risk in terms of the bridges, opening the estate to the public for the first time with new walking and cycling routes, and reveal and enhance key historic features such as the pond, the walled garden and historic drives. Without this scheme, there is no realistic
1 minute
mechanism
remaining
to secure these heritage outcomes. Turning to ecology, the presence of badges is not a reason to refuse this application. It is a technical matter capable of being addressed through mitigation and licensing. Unlike as suggested, we are not contesting that the badges need to be accommodated. We are committed to a badger mitigation strategy. The principles and framework for the content can be dealt with through reserve matter stages. It is notable that the wider estate provides around 120 to 140 hectares of untouched habitat, far exceeding typical requirements for badger territories. This is an outline application allowing flexibility at reserve matter stage to design suitable mitigation strategy. In addition, biodiversity net gains is almost 16%, is also achievable, but again, this will be confirmed through the reserve matter stage. We respectfully ask you to take a balanced and proportionate view and support this application. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Michelle. I'd just like to ask the panel officer if you'd like to respond to any of these questions.
I'd just like to respond to the badger issue on this. An outline planning application does usually give flexibility, and we work hard to and have worked hard following the resolution of the vehicular highways issues on this, which caused a significant and extended impasse, to come to a balanced and reasonable judgment on those areas where there was still disagreement at that time, such as active travel and the footpaths officers' requirements. Both of those officers had significant concerns about the nature of the proposals, but have taken a pragmatic view in terms of agreeing to conditions if the application was accepted. But the effect on badgers has to be clear before we give or before we can make a determination on this effectively, in that you can't assess the effect on the species until you know what the foraging habits, the extent of those are. The survey works, as Leslie from the Badger Group said. The conclusion of the 2024 Badger report was that further survey work was needed. We've got an extended and updated ecological impact assessment, which effectively includes some potential mitigations that could help those, but without knowing exactly where the badgers are and what their foraging habits are, we can't make a reasoned judgment on this. And because of the nature of where some of the badger sets are on the site, there are concerns that in approving the quantum of development, 140 lodges, and with the best will in the world, when a developer hears an upper quantum on an outline scheme, that is what they aim at, quite reasonably, to get the maximum out of it. The effects on the protected species can't be known yet. It's a significant issue for us, and something that we're deeply uncomfortable with in terms of the amount of work. And I have to say, after the application's been in for an extended period of time, whilst there's been focus on some of the significant impasses, this is something that has largely been left to be sorted out at the end. This isn't the sort of thing that we're comfortable with policy-wise for an application, but as mentioned again by the Badger Group, there is legislation advice in the PPG and in the national legislation about this advises against making planning decisions without full knowledge and survey work for this particular protected species. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just to emphasise what the planning officer said, because of that lack of information as to the impact on badgers in terms of foraging sets, etc. We do feel as officers that it's not a situation where members can undertake a balancing exercise here and come to a view as to approval, because we don't have that information and it is a legal requirement. So, you know, if members were to get to a position where they were minded to approve this application, my advice would be that it really ought to be deferred for that additional information to be provided. Obviously, we'll see where we get to as part of the debate on that. Also, just an issue for Councillor Griffiths, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but I did see that you left the chamber whilst the parish council and the two local members were speaking. And in those circumstances, I think you probably missed too much of the representations to be in a position to participate further.
Thank you. I'd now like to open the room up to any questions from the members. Councillor Wilkes.
Thanks, Chair. I find myself thinking several years of work with officers and the applicant, and we haven't got what we need, apparently, in relation to badgers. And I'd like to know from the applicant why they haven't got those surveys done. But on the other side of it, I'd like to understand from officers, because we have no conditions in this application, which I understand from the emails I've sent to officers before the meeting, that that's because you're recommending refusal. But we can't see any conditions, and if we were minded to approve, it'd be helpful if we could have seen what those conditions are. But can you just confirm, can we not just condition that the reports, the mitigation, has to be proven and provided before any development can commence, and that we condition it at this point, given that we're assumingly going to have to delegate to yourselves as officers to do all of the rest of the conditions, because there's none in the report?
I'll start off with the conditions, if I may, then I'll hand back over to Neil. The report does consider each topic area at length, and for the most part concludes where conditions are appropriate. You know, there's effectively those areas that are conditioned are both explained against the tests of conditions and what would be required for an extensive range of topics that's all set out in the report. And that's from everything from targeted recruitment to ensure that that jobs go into the local economy, through to the high-level requirements of highways and the details of those highways conditions that would be required. The details of the footpaths condition is set out in there. The details of the B&G is set out in there. When we make a recommendation, it's got to lead to a conclusion. The conclusion is for refusal, the refusal reasons are set out, but the report is balanced and sets out all the topic areas where we feel we can condition it. And for the large part, it describes what those conditions are likely to be without setting them out. It would be wrong to give you an either-or on the end of the report for that. So I think the information is in the report for you, but I'll hand over to Neil for the badger stuff again. Or Steve.
Thank you, Chair. Just before we hand over to Neil, just to pick up on Councillor Wilkes' point there, so just to assure members and indeed all members of the public today that this is custom and practice, that the planning officers has to set out a recommendation, Chair, and arrive at the recommendation, which today is refusal. In the event that following debate and assessment of all the issues, members were minded to overturn the recommendation, then that would no doubt be delegated to officers to work with yourself, Chair, with a suite of conditions and Section 106 agreements in accordance with our policy requirements. We've never, in my 17 years sat in this job, we've never presented an either way recommendation. I think legal colleagues would say that would be inappropriate to do so. So we've never come to this committee with a list of conditions, perhaps contrary to what Councillor Wilkes is suggesting. In terms of the legal process on the badges, I think Neil and Steve have been clear on that. And again, through my experience, if we were minded to proceed straight to approval today, then we would be at significant risk of judicial review challenge, because the relevant evidence under the Wildlife Protection Act just hasn't been presented in terms of why that hasn't been presented and carried out earlier. That's nothing that the officer team can advise on, Chair. That's a strategic, tactical decision which has been led by the applicants and their planning consultants. But yeah, with your approval, Chair, I'd just like to hand over to Neil on that final point.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, going back to Councillor Wilkes' two queries about one, why is there not a suite of conditions for members to look at? That wouldn't be usual in circumstances where an application is recommended for refusal. I mean, clearly, in the ordinary course of events where members wish to take a contrary view and approve an application, then there'd be a discussion about conditions. I would expect the planning officer to be in a position to say, well, generally, these are the sorts of conditions that we'd be looking for in terms of the main ones, but the actual detail of that would be delegated to officers to finalise later. Equally, if there was a need for 106 obligations, that would also be delegated to officers for the future. In respect of his question of, well, can we not just condition the further Badger survey work? The answer is no, we don't feel that we can, because we don't have enough information to know whether what the magnitude of the impact is and what the mitigation might look to be. You know, clearly, if we had that information, then you could potentially have a condition that secured mitigation, but we just don't have enough information at the moment to even come to the view as to whether it's acceptable or not. So we can't have a situation where permission's granted for something which ultimately may prove to be unacceptable, and we just don't know whether it is or it isn't.
Councillor Wilkes, are you happy with the answers from the officers, or would you want to speak to the applicant as well?
I'm satisfied with the answers from the officers. I'd just like to know from the applicant why, given it's been so long, why they haven't actually provided the information. Because if you know, otherwise we're either deferring or turning this down based on the information we've been given from officers. And given that this has such a positive potential for jobs for this county and for tourism, I don't understand why they would do that to themselves.
Thank you, Councillor. Michelle, can you come back on any of that, please?
Of course, Chair. We have instructed E3 ecologists, which are, you know, nationally recognised as ecologists. They have undertaken Badger surveys, and that's informed the ECIA. And this is set out in paragraph 201 of the officer's report. I think the issue is whether additional surveys are required, further surveys, but we're now not within an appropriate window to undertake further Badger surveys at this point in time.
Councillor Wilkes, are you all right with that answer? Yeah. Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Mark probably covered what I was going to ask, exactly that same question, because there's the professional advice from the officers is like we're between a rock and a hard place here, and I'm on the same page as Councillor Wilkes. Is like what we got before us is a real sort of potential good thing for this county, and it'd probably be a crime to refuse it. It'd be a hard one to refuse, so I mean, if people look for it, I'm happy to defer this application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor
Bowen? Just a couple of questions. There was only 27 responses from 216 letters. Is that right? Yeah. Can we conditionally approve this until we have this Badger survey or not?
I think the advice we're giving you is we need the Badger survey information, so you can tell us. Well, I'll hand over Neil, who'll put it more eloquently.
Short answer to that is no. You can express a view in principle one way or the other, but if it's to be deferred, it's to be deferred for that further information to be provided, and then it would come back to this committee and members would make a fresh decision on it.
Scott, just one little additional I was going to ask. Is there an option, maybe this is for Steve, this one, rather than disturbing the sort of habitat for these badgers, and the site is immense, enormous, is there not potential to work around the site and leave everything as it is and do all the development away from that habitat?
The badger, the clan is made up of a number of sets, and the sets in terms of the length of the tunnels can be quite extensive. I think the element of the badger survey work that's missing is the extent of the foraging around, so it's the wider area. There are aspects of the implications for badgers potentially we could condition, but it's that overview of knowing the baseline of you know exactly what we're dealing with and therefore mitigating exactly what's on site for what is ultimately a protected species. So I think we've tried as hard as we can to find, and the applicant has latterly, to try and find a way around this impasse. But in terms of the requirements of the legislation and the government advice on this, we really don't think we can make a decision on this without that additional information. The survey periods for badgers comes around twice a year, depending on, I think it's February to April and October to November. And obviously we've gone through a few sort of revolutions of that through the course of the application. But I'm afraid we're at an impasse on this in that you've got a considered report before you. It assesses the heritage and landscape harms, it acknowledges the benefits, but ultimately it says we're stuck at this. We've worked hard to set up for success conditions what we can, but this is an impasse for us, I'm afraid.
Councillor Sherman.
Right. Two things. The planting of the reforestation has nothing to do with this application. That is a totally separate matter. Secondly, I think a full badger survey should be carried out so this committee can make a decision on this, and therefore I recommend this application be deferred and brought back to council when that survey is complete.
Do you have any more questions, or are you happy to move on to the debate? Yep, move on to debate, please. Cool. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think we've heard everything we need to hear today, really. I think the landscape harm is minimal. I think the tourist accommodation is desperately needed in the area. The jobs desperately needed in the area. I mean, with 27 objections, I can't see how it's overwhelming. You know, the local population obviously aren't overwhelmingly against this application. Unfortunately, without the badger survey, we can't approve this. Yeah, I think we should defer this until after the badger survey has been carried out, and I look forward to them bringing it back, and hopefully we can look at it more favourably at that point. I think this is a really good thing for the area, and I think it's a really good thing for the county.
Councillor Wilkes.
I had a good look at all the suggested landscape impacts, and I mean, in regards to heritage impacts, I actually thought the development was going to protect and improve heritage, and particularly the built heritage that's there, which is just deteriorating and getting worse and worse. And if nothing's done, then the Parkland area will probably just deteriorate to nothing as well. But we can't approve something. I'm actually really disappointed with the applicant, because this is the kind of development that we've been crying out for in County Durham to bring jobs and tourism. And we have people coming to the county and they're only staying here for one day and then they're going off somewhere else. This is the kind of development where people will stay for a week or two. Bringing, as the local members have said, bringing jobs to an area that needs jobs as well. And so I'm really disappointed with the applicant. But what I'll do is I'll second Councillor Stevenson's suggestion of deferral. I don't personally believe that the objections in relation to landscaping stack up. So if we can deal with the badger issue, then I could see this as being a pretty decent application to approve.
Chair, thank you. Just coming back on some of the points that members have made, and I have to say I don't think myself, Steve, or any of the officer team are surprised at the way that members have assessed the weight. As members know, landscape and against economic development, tourism benefits, they're all valid planning material considerations. And just picking up on the gist of member comments about the value of the economic development impact, indeed the comments from the two local members, I have to say this is the first time, and talking it through with Steve and Graham before, I think this is the first time in 17 years we've had to recommend refusal for significant tourist development, which wasn't something that we did easily. But I think to be frank, due to the quality of the ecology work that has been put forward by the applicants team here, it's very unfortunate, but we find ourselves in no other alternative position. And I think, as Neil has said before, if members were minded to go that step further today and insist on trying to approve the application, to be frank, we'd be staring right down the barrel of a gun of a clear judicial review case. So I think, Chair, listening to the way the debate's gone, and this is something that officers will take away now following the debate, if we can get the ecology work undertaken to the correct standard, and again, nobody on this top table or the side table can advise why that hasn't been done to date. In my professional experience, it's remarkable that the team haven't got the application in a position where it could be approved if members were minded to give more weight to the economic development impact. But I think officers will take away and listen to the debate, and hopefully we can present the application to a future committee in a more balanced manner.
Councillor Freeman.
Thanks, Chair. I'm quite happy to support deferral. I actually suspect that we won't be coming back with any future application to approve this, because I suspect the applicants have done as much work as they have done and realised that probably this is not an acceptable scheme to be approved because of the situation with the badgers. And I suspect that's why we don't have the information. So I'm very disappointed with the applicants, but I suspect that they would know the results if they'd done a thorough survey, and they've had 2 years to do that. So I think they failed abysmally. But yes, let's give them another chance and let's defer this application. But I would question, how long do we defer, and can we defer an application for? I mean, we've heard that the next sort of period when any survey could take place is the end of this year. Is that an acceptable period to defer an application, or should we actually be refusing this application?
To a large extent, it may be down to the availability of the applicants' ecological advisors. They're very much in demand. And as I said, the next 2 periods where survey work's appropriate is for October to November or February to April. So I don't know from Neil if it's appropriate to give a time period for the additional survey work to be carried out and this to be brought back to committee, perhaps.
Chair, we wouldn't normally sort of specify a time period within which the application must be brought back. I mean, clearly it's constrained by when the survey work can be done, and the planning officers told us that that's not going to be till October or November. So it will be a case of the application will come back once we're in receipt of that information and it's been assessed by officers, whatever period that takes.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In fairness to Stephen's comments there, and Steve's report, the plan report, it wasn't a hard and fast refusal. I think it was really fair in your report, Steve. And yeah, it was just a shame you had to put that. You were stuck to refuse it. I don't think it come through hard and clear that you wanted to refuse it. I don't think that was in the writing. I think in the bigger picture in general, the area. Quite recently, the local members will agree with this, the lost elders, lots of jobs recently went there, and so we've got, if we regard the economy, be open arms to accept such sort of good applications like this. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wilkes.
Sorry, can I just check with the legal officer, Chair, that there's no potential whatsoever for a non-determination in relation to this? Because if somebody was to go to appeal and say we hadn't determined it, are there any risks at all of that, which would then mean that potentially what we should actually do is refuse and let them bring it back at a later date rather than us deferring it? Because what I wouldn't want is for it to go to determination, it gets passed, and then we find ourselves in a completely different predicament.
Chair, I'll check with the planning officer as to sort of where we are in terms of extensions of time and agreements, etc. But you're absolutely right, Councillor Wilkes. I would expect that those will be in place and that there will be a significant risk of non-determination. it's a matter for members as to whether you wish to defer in those circumstances or refuse the application in accordance with the officer's recommendation.
Chair, on that basis, I'm going to withdraw my seconding, because I do feel quite concerned that what we could do is accidentally end up with this application getting passed through the back door without the concerns that we all have been dealt with, and I'll move referral instead, Chair. Move refusal instead, I should say.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkes. Do we have a second for that?
Yes, thank you. Now that I've heard that advice from our legal officer, I will support Councillor Wilkes and recommend that we refuse this application.
Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just for clarifications for Neil, this one is like, but even with doing a refuse, if the application was refused, the risk is that the applicant could still win the appeal. So say it could have the same outcome, whereas the deferral's got an opportunity to, you know, to get things right. Unless I'm picking it up wrong, Neil.
Yeah, I would agree with that assessment, Councillor Bell. I mean, clearly we've got two rival motions here, one for deferment, one for refusal. I'll discuss with the chair, but generally we take the deferment motion first. If that is not carried, then we'd go to a vote on refusal.
Councillor Bowen?
Because Councillor Wilkes has cancelled his proposal for Councillor Stevens, I'll go and second the deferral instead.
Thank you. Have we got any more questions on the debate? Councillor Eales?
Without wishing to sound flippant on this, it's fairly obvious that most people on this side of the chamber would like this development to go forward, although it's obviously not able to go forward at the moment. Let us not be badgered on this topic. I don't think there really is any point in putting any other motions forward. Let us go with what we've got, vote on it, and if the development is turned down, well, it's up to them to come back. If it's allowed to proceed with some additional stipulations, fair enough. But if we just turn it down willy-nilly, there's always a chance that they can take it and win on appeal, in which case we're sitting with egg on our face for something that we really wanted in the first place. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilkes?
So I think we all need to be clear what's going to happen here as a committee, because if we vote for deferral, this can go to non-determination, and there is far more chance of the applicant then getting this application passed without all of the restrictions that we need to put in place. If it's simply voted down, all they have to do is do the work that they should have done, that we all want them to do, and bring it back at whatever point they've got that work done. But deferring this really does create a risk. I'm pretty confident that no inspector, having seen that they hadn't provided information on protected species, would allow an appeal. I just don't think it would happen. I don't think it's ever happened, to be perfectly honest. Maybe with HS2 or something daft like that.
Chair, I would suggest that an inspector would be in the same boat as we are, which is that they would be unable to determine an appeal without that information.
Thank you. As we have two motions, I'd like to put the first one to a vote, which will be to defer the plan until we have the correct information to bring it back to council. So can I have...
just point out that it was the refusal that was valid first, because I withdrew my seconding and Councillor Freeman then confirmed that he would second my proposal for refusal, and then Councillor Boweron said that he would replace me for the other, so I'm pretty sure that we should be voting on the refusal first.
Chair, I'm not sure it matters really which order it's voted in. you know, the decision will be what it is. But my understanding was actually that the first person to move deferral, I think, was Councillor Bell. Yes, other members also put forward that motion subsequently, but I think it was actually moved and seconded way before Councillor Stevenson and Councillor Schulman spoke about it.
Thank you. So just to clarify this vote will be to defer until they have the correct information and bring it back to committee. So can I have all in favour for deferring this planning application, please? Councillor Griffiths, you can't vote, sorry. And against, please? That's deferred and carried. Thank you. Moving on to the second planning application today, I'd like to invite Louisa Olivia, the officer, to present on the Prince Bishop Shopping Centre, High Street, Durham.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So this is a revised proposal, and just to give you a bit of history, back in 2024, the committee approved the redevelopment of the Prince Bishop Centre, and that comprised the partial demolition of the shopping centre above the existing mall level and the erection of replacement commercial units, a hotel and purpose-built student accommodation, along with a new outdoor public space and public realm improvements. Now, that permission has not been implemented, but still could be, and is therefore a fallback position that has to be given weight in the decision-making. The applicants are now looking to change the design, as a PBSA end user has now been identified, who requires an uplift in the number of beds, and therefore the dropping of the hotel element of the scheme, and various changes to the design are required to facilitate the additional student rooms. I do have one update for committee in that we would suggest that the wording of condition 8 be altered to require an updated flood risk assessment before works to the external riverside terrace commence. I don't have the exact wording with me, but we can agree that with the chair in the event of an approval. So this slide shows the red line location for the shopping centre, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. There is the Marketplace to the west, the River Wear to the east, Leazes Road to the north, and Elvet Bridge to the south. The site is within the primary retail shopping area for Durham City. The site lies within the World Heritage Site inner setting and within the Durham City Conservation Area. There are several listed buildings surrounding the shopping centre, and it can be seen in the setting of the Elvet Bridge, which is a scheduled monument. So this slide shows the aerial view of the site, and it gives you an idea of the prominence of the site from the two main routes into Durham. The top photos show both ways into the site from the marketplace and Sadler Street, and the bottom photos are taken from within the shopping centre with retail to the ground floor with ancillary office and retail above. The top two photos show the car park and staircase elevations facing onto the riverside, and the bottom two photos here show the mainly inactive elevations currently to Lees's Road. So here we have some existing and proposed elevations of the proposed riverside elevation. So the top slide shows the top two photographs show the approved changes, and the bottom slide shows the changes now being proposed. So we've got the existing on the left-hand side, approved, top right, proposed now, bottom right. We've also got some existing and proposed elevations of the proposed Lees's Road elevation, and the proposed changes to the previous approval are on the bottom right, the previous approval is on the top right. The next slide shows the proposed open square area that opens out onto the riverside. And this next slide shows the current retail at mall level and the proposed level 5 with the proposed new retail floor plans shown in yellow, with the PBSA rooms in blue and pink, and with the PBSA entrance from the high street and internal amenity spaces in the peach colour. And this next slide shows the level 6 as becoming mostly PBSA, with the small area of Class E towards Sadler Street. And this next slide shows the new level 7 and 8, which are mostly PBSA. And this next slide shows the changes at floor level adjacent to the riverside, where the current boat store would be changed to a cafe, a restaurant, or a leisure use, and there would be the creation of an external raised outdoor terrace. So we've got some more detailed drawings in relation to the riverside. So the main changes from the previous application that will be seen from the riverside, where it is proposed to demolish to mall level and rebuild with PBS units set back from the podium edge in a scaled series of frontages. Beneath this, the current gantry walkway will be given better definition, and below that, the multi-storey car park will be screened with metal fins, and closer to the ground level, there would be low-level planting. The existing turquoise blue staircase would be significantly reduced in scale and clad to match the surrounding building materials, and there's the raised external terrace, which would be created adjacent to the boat stall. So the other elevation that will see the most change would be the Lees's Road elevation, where the upper levels and existing roofs would be removed to the stone wall base, and the detailing to the next corner would be removed. Above this stone wall base would be domestic scale bays with recessed elements. The stone wall and levels above would incorporate continuous window openings, which would continue through to the next structure. This slide shows the boot side and front elevation currently at the top and the proposed elevations beneath. This elevation will not significantly alter on the frontage, albeit the entrance will be split into two to create one entrance for boots and one for the PBSA. And the additional windows will see a much more active elevation internal to the shopping street. So if we turn to consultee responses, the City of Durham Parish Council has no objection, subject to a proportionate uplift in Section 106 contributions. There is no objection from the Highways Authority, the lead local flood authority and ecology, subject to relevant conditions. The active travel section have raised concerns around mainly the lack of an active travel ordered, which would determine if there is a need for pedestrian or cycle improvement measures, and exploring the potential for wider accessibility improvements. Conditions are suggested to secure suitable cycle parking, changing, locker and shower facilities. Durham Constabulary have no objections, but they have provided advice in respect of secure by design, safety, site security and counter-terrorism. The NHS have requested £123,407, and that's a contribution to create extra capacity. And the Environment Agency requested conditions in respect of the use of the boat store and terrace, a flood warning and evacuation plan, final details of the proposed external riverside terrace to be agreed, and a species protection plan for otters. Turning to public responses, there have been a total of 4 representations from the City of Durham Trust, St Nicholas Community Forum, Winnie Hill Community Group and a local resident. The City of Durham Trust is broadly supportive of the amended scheme but has raised some concerns which are detailed as follows, along with the 3 other responses, all of which object to the proposal. And these relate to the principle of the development, the impacts to business and leisure, the impacts to highway safety, active travel concerns, the design along the riverside and Leazes Road and the materials being proposed, and the need for uplift in healthcare, and the loss of a public square. But I must make clear that the public square does still actually form part of these proposals. I think there's just been a misunderstanding in looking at the plans there. Mary Foy, the MP for the City of Durham, supports the application and highlights that PBSA is a viable and pragmatic alternative to the hotel use and would reduce the pressure on family housing. So, in conclusion, planning permission was granted in 2024 for the redevelopment of the shopping centre. Since approval, a new end user has been identified. This revised scheme effectively seeks to remove the approved hotel element, increase the amount of PBSA, along with revised external detailing. This development would continue to improve the economic performance of the county through economic and employment benefits. The development would preserve and enhance the setting of the World Heritage Site and would enhance parts of the conservation area and the setting of several listed buildings. The future amenity in terms of privacy and light for some of the students would not be of usually accepted standards, regardless of the circumstances of the site, and there is some limited policy conflict in this respect. The application site performs well in terms of access by sustainable modes to services and facilities and the university, with links to existing and new links proposed. The development performs less well in terms of cycling routes, but increases cycle parking provision requirements to facilitate increased cycle ownership. As a result, the development of the site would not fully accord with all of the sustainable transport aims of the County Durham Plan and the Durham City Neighbourhood Plan. The development mitigates its own impact in relation to highway safety, ecological considerations, and subject to conditions to drainage and flooding matters. Overall, while recognising there is some limited policy conflict, when read as a whole, it is considered that the development would comply with the provisions of the County Durham Plan and the Durham City Neighbourhood Plan, and is considered to represent sustainable development. In accordance with MPPF paragraph 11C, the development should be approved without delay. There are no material considerations, including representations received, which indicate otherwise. Therefore, this application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Louisa. We do have a couple of speakers today on supporting this application, and that is from the applicant and the agent. It is Robert Didden, James Taylor and Trisham Taylor. Can I just please remind you have 5 minutes between you all to speak, and please put your case forward.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. James Taylor from Citrus Group. I'll be the only one speaking, Chair. Thank you. I don't intend to speak for long, Chair. Your officers have comprehensively covered all of the key issues very well within their committee report and presentation. We're obviously delighted to be before you with a positive recommendation from your officers for this major regeneration scheme in the heart of the city, which has been a long time in the crafting now, and very pleased to say, now in a position to take forward. As you'll be aware, the application is a resubmission, as we've heard, for the 2024 application. Since that application, the focus has been very much on delivery and funding, so the substantial benefits of the scheme and investment into the city centre can be realised. Citrus Group and US firm Landmark Properties have now partnered to bring the scheme to fruition, Landmark being the largest provider of student housing in the US and now active in the European market in the UK. The changes before you today are a result of further detailed design work alongside Landmark to understand buildability and cost in much more detail to ensure we can deliver and fund the scheme. The key components remain as previously approved, such as the south-facing public square, the commercial spaces beneath the PBSA, obviously with the student accommodation above, as well as enhancements to the key facades, remodelling of the stair tower. Unfortunately, the turquoise stair tower will be no longer. I'm sure that will be a relief to many. Critically, the scale and massing also remain broadly as approved, and crucially, the height is exactly as previously approved. And this is obviously, of course, due to a lot of work that was done with the heritage constraints on the previous application. By removing the unviable hotel use and working through further detailed design, the number of student beds has indeed increased to 504 overall. It's regrettable that a hotel can't be made to work. I think many of you will know that that was very much our initial intention. And we've tried multiple iterations of it and formats, and we've rigorously tested that. But unfortunately, despite accepted demand, the values associated with the room rates and the cost of delivering the hotels just doesn't make this viable, Chair. We must be mindful that this is a very challenging build. It's not your usual build. It is hampered by its constrained location and working at height atop of an existing podium, because obviously everything below level 5, which you will understand as the high street, is being retained. So all of that obviously drives additional build complexity and inevitably cost. Targeted external design refinements have been made to the Leasey Road and River Weir elevations, again reflecting buildability and operational requirements of Landmark, but whilst obviously still respecting the historical environment, and have received positive response obviously from Historic England and your own design and heritage officers. The proposed development will create a modern retail environment which responds to market trends whilst offering flexibility for independent retail and leisure operators across the site, as well as reactivating frontages within the primary shopping area of Durham City Centre. The application proposals provide a number of significant economic, social and environmental benefits, which both individually and collectively include an investment of around 60 million, supporting 550 direct and indirect construction jobs during the 3-year build period. A new pedestrian link bridge will connect New Elvitt Bridge with a new multi-use public square, improving pedestrian accessibility and connectivity across the city centre, and of course the development itself. BREEAM Excellent for the PBSA with maximised roof-mounted solar PV and no fossil fuel use. With Landmark Properties taking a lead on delivery, this transformative scheme for the city centre will be delivered, and pre-contract works will start immediately after the committee decision. All the further detailed design work will then follow, then going through the Building Safety Act gateways, which add a lot of time now into the process. So we have to start in earnest to achieve a reopening in 2030, Chair. This means that physical works to the existing building will start Q2 27. As you'd imagine, Chair, a project of this scale has required a lot of partnership working with a wide range of stakeholders involved to get to this point. And there's been a very worthwhile, robust and constructive journey since we acquired the centre in 22. And it's great to be in front of this committee with our delivery partner Landmark, with a clear route to bringing this fantastic scheme to fruition. So we would urge members to support your officer's recommendation, and either myself or Landmark would be very happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Louise, have you got anything to add to that, please? Going forward, can I open the floor to questions from the members, please? Councillor Freeman.
Thank you. I should just say I'm one of the local ward members. This is within my ward. I actually have 4 questions. I don't know whether you'd prefer me to do one at a time or just to do all 4 and then get 4 answers. It's up to you.
Are they all around the same thing, or are all 4 completely different questions?
Are they all similar? Or
No, they're all different. They're about different, the 4 different aspects of this application.
Yeah, just go ahead, cool.
I'll do the first one, and then we'll see where we get to. The hotel was a welcome part of the previous application, which was approved. The applicants, as we've heard, have now ditched this in favour of more student accommodation. Was the viability of a hotel something that planners have considered when considering this new application, or do they not feel that that was a necessary consideration for them when we've seen the change to remove the hotel and replace it by a PBSA?
No, it's not. There's no requirement to consider the viability of the hotel. We're just considering the development that's in front of us now.
Right, thank you. Second question is about student accommodation, and it perhaps is about student accommodation in the sort of wider area, but obviously this is part of it. This application increases student beds by 100 over what was previously approved. I just want to ask our officers whether we will keep having applications for approval for student beds when there is, in the city, when there is no demand for further beds. Paragraph 107 of the report highlights that there were an 800-bed surplus in 2024-25. Since the previous application was approved for 400 student beds, we have approved in Durham for an extra 325 beds in PBSAs and a further 44 new HMOs. Need is apparently something we can give little consideration to, but the report and previous applications does mention qualitative need. When do officers think that we will have enough of this qualitative need not to keep approving further student accommodation applications in the city? Paragraph 114 of the report says it is difficult to confirm there would be quantitative need for the further 96 beds. So I think that, in a sense, is answering that question, in that we're getting to a point where in the city we can no longer give any evidence that there is any quantitative need, never mind just need, for further student accommodation. And I'm sure that's something we will have to consider in future applications if this one is approved today.
Yeah. Yeah, so at the moment, I think in sort of the next year or so, the university are going to be producing a new plan for growth. So once those details are out, we'll have a much better idea of the quantitative need and perhaps as well the qualitative need. So we'll be able to work off that for any future applications that are received once we get that detail through. But obviously each application has to be considered on its own merits. In this particular case, the developers are targeting particularly sort of international student target market. So, you know, sort of a lot of the detail regarding this application is around that, and we do feel there is a qualitative need in this case.
Thank you for that answer. And yes, that's very true. We are all awaiting the university's plans for the future. I suspect that those plans will not see any significant increase in numbers, and in fact we'll probably see a decrease in foreign students, as is the case nationally. And as we know, Durham University are in a fairly parlous financial situation at the moment. Next question is just about retail. While it is welcome that the application is retaining retail, I do note that we're losing 10,000 square metres of retail space in this development, which is 2/3 of what is presently there. I do accept, sadly, that just like every other town centre in the county and indeed the country, Durham City is suffering from a lack of people shopping for retail in town centres. And therefore this obviously is welcome that you know, the applicants are looking to have retail units beneath the student accommodation. I just wonder whether it's possible in any way that we can condition that those units are indeed for retail purposes. What we're seeing in Durham at the moment is that while we have very few empty shop units, virtually all of those units are being occupied by restaurants, cafes, cocktail bars, drinking establishments, and I think we don't really need more of those, but what we do need is retail, and that is what this application seems to be offering. But is that something that we can actually condition in any way, or do we just have to see what interest comes along in 2 or 3 years' time when this application will be open?
Yeah, I don't really think it would be reasonable to condition that. Obviously, retail falls under the use class A, as do those other uses that you mentioned. So I don't really think I think it would be too restrictive to condition that. And obviously, sort of, you know, modern shopping habits have changed where people don't just go into the town for retail; they are going through the experience now. So the fact that yes, there may be restaurants, there may be leisure uses there, but that should also benefit retail in the area. So yeah, I don't think that would be reasonable.
Thanks, and this is my final question. But to myself, being the local ward councillor is perhaps the most important, which is about the developer contributions. Paragraph 285 of the report states that Section 106 for open space provision should be £291,816. However, the report goes on to provide only £121,082, whereas the extra £170,000 that would go into my ward gone. I know the reply. This is in the new public arena, or the public area rather, not an arena, in the development. But it's really not quite good enough. This is a commercial company developing a commercial site. The square will make their development more attractive for future tenants of the retail units and the residents, students that are living there. Its attractiveness will no doubt lead through to higher rents for both the students and the retailers. And the losers? Well, the losers are the city and its residents, who obviously are going to have 3 years of disruption when this application leads to demolitions and the amount of work that's involved in redeveloping the site. So my ward seems to be losing, as I say, £170,000 of contributions. Yes, we're gaining a public square in a private development that will no doubt enhance the development, but I simply don't think that's good enough. Is it therefore acceptable to amend the recommendations in paragraph 331 so that instead of the figure that's given, we actually reinstate the £291,000 that officers originally said would be the likely sum that should be paid for a development such as this?
So we have taken a similar approach to the previous fallback position, and that we have agreed to a less standard amount of open space contribution, which the members did agree last time. And that was based on the fact that they are creating this public square and spending a considerable amount of money on that. And also sort of having a look at what is around the scheme. Any public space contribution has to be tied to the students being actually, you know, within the vicinity of that area where the students would actually use that open space. So we consider that the amount we have requested is reasonable. It's prorated in terms of the uplift of the students. And I know there's been a comment about whether it could be spent on the marketplace. The wording of the Section 106 will, you know, sort of say it has to be spent in the vicinity of, you know, of the local area. So that might well be the case that it could be spent there. Yes, we don't agree that you know, it needs to be that maximum that was mentioned by the policy.
Thank you for that answer. I mean, the marketplace is just the sort of place I was thinking that we could indeed do with an extra £170,000 spending in the marketplace. So that's very much where I'm coming from. I know that what I've said won't be any surprise to the applicants because I've said pretty much the same thing when this application was last in front of us. Thanks. But I'll now go on to everyone else on the committee. I've occupied enough of everyone's time.
Councillor Wilkes, do you still have a question after all of that, please?
Yeah, I don't know if we'll get to application 3, and I say I'm disappointed with the applicant for the third one as well, but I am disappointed that we're losing a hotel chair. I'd like to know what happens, or what the applicant may feel will happen, if we see a downturn in overseas students coming to the UK, because we are at that cusp of where we're going to end up with so much purpose-built accommodation that we could end up with a load of empty buildings in the city if something was to happen to the number of people attending university from overseas. I'd also like to ask, what's going to happen to all of the people who are currently working in all of these businesses there, and what's going to happen to those businesses, and what mitigation measures has the applicant put in place to assist with people who are going to lose their jobs when this shuts down for 33 months, and with the help to relocate, because we are at a point where most retail units are currently full in the city now.
Could the applicant reply to that, please?
Yeah, certainly, Chair. So I think, as I've mentioned on the previous application, obviously many of you are aware, we've had a very open dialogue with our tenants, probably a lot more than many would because of those very reasons, Councillor Wilkes, in terms of the livelihoods that it affects. I think if you purely go through the head office of all of these retailers, you find that they don't necessarily share everything with their staff, which you can understand. But we have a moral responsibility in terms of sharing our plans with them and allowing people to prepare reasonably for their future. And we have always done that. Obviously, Richard, our centre manager, does that actively all of the time. And post today, assuming a positive outcome, we'll be then doing another process with our tenants to manage that through to Q1 27, which is not a time that will come as a surprise to any of them. I mean, we have, as many will note, we could have acquired this centre and managed it down. We've kept the cost base pretty much where it was in terms of staff. We've actually invested in assisting a huge amount of pop-ups, local businesses to try different business ideas, etc. And actually, as it happens today, we are nearly fully let. That doesn't equate to value. I have to be very careful on that. That's not paying commercial rents by any stretch. That's a significant subsidy. But it has helped the local economy in terms of helped a lot of local people establish businesses and concepts that hopefully they can springboard into, albeit unfortunately not in this location for the foreseeable future. We will be entering into pre-let arrangements with potentially some of our existing tenants, as you'd imagine, many of whom have expressed interest in those discussions. It's obviously an iterative process. We need to get through planning in order to be able to agree those, but we fully envisage that we'll have a significant percentage of the scheme pre-let prior to 2030. We genuinely see that, and we're seeing, just if I may, Chair, yes, retail's changing. There will be certainly more independence, but we're also seeing more nationals reinvent themselves. Retail does this every now and again. It reinvents itself with new models. There is definitely more interest in the market. It's growing. It's not huge, but it's definitely a lot better than where it was in a post-COVID world. And that can only be positive with a view of a 2030 opening. And of course, the student spend is significant. And you ask any of our retailers, and they would say they won't be here without the student spend. And that goes for the whole of the city centre. So that can only help reinforce that. Just in terms to the first point that Councillor Wilt raised. Obviously, we've had discussions with the university, and obviously they've got accommodation plans and things on hold, and looking at what they're doing there, etc. with a lot of things. But I think the qualitative, one of the issues, Durham does struggle with that high quality of student accommodation. The student castle model that was is now quite outdated. It's still a very, very good scheme, the student castle one, but the market has moved on. It still lets very well. This scheme will undoubtedly let very well. It's a very strong scheme. It's a very strong scheme internally in the way it operates and the spaces that's created. I think, when you look at the university over a 10-year trajectory, yes, there are periods in that where numbers do ebb and flow, but long term, the growth is only in one direction, and it always has been for many, many years. And when you look at the data, now, I think we're probably in an increment, incremental growth at the moment. It's not going to be huge, but that will ebb and flow over the years. And I think, we've got to look ahead to this being a 2030 opening, a couple of years to stabilise occupation. And again, the university will adapt in terms of its international offer in exploring other markets, which it's currently doing. So we don't see that as any threat, Chair, to the viability of this scheme, and we're very confident with the location. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions to the applicant, Councillor Wicks? Any more questions? Councillor Potts?
Yeah, it's just a quick one. Obviously, it's not something I've normally come across, and I know the councillors from Durham City themselves are showing concerns about being able to fill them up. But if this accommodation is built and they don't have the student, the amount of students to fill them up themselves, can the accommodation be used for any other purposes, or does this have some type of restriction that it's only for students?
So PBSA comes under the sui generis use class, so that means to change it to a different use class it would need planning permission. So yes, it could change, but it would need planning permission in the future.
Thank you.
Do you have any more questions from members? No, I'd like to move on to the debate, please. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think it looks great. I think it's an improvement to the existing building that's there currently. I know some people have a financial interest in having HMOs within Durham City, but I think bringing students out of the HMOs and into PBSA is a good thing for the city, and it's a good thing for the housing. For people living in the city, that they've got more housing to buy then obviously. So I'd like to recommend this for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bowen.
Are there second Councillor Stevenson's proposal? I think it will benefit. We need to be in more near the university, especially for students. So this is ideal location for them as well.
Councillor Freeman.
Thank you. I remember when this when this shopping centre opened in 1998. It's not a long time ago, but it's a world ago in terms of the retail environment that we've now got compared with 1998. And I do accept that the situation at the Prince Bishop Centre cannot continue. Yes, all the units are occupied, but I think very few of them are actually paying any rent. That's not a sustainable model to continue. And therefore, I do welcome the application because it is, well, it's the only hope really for ensuring that we do have a viable centre there, which could offer new retail opportunities in the city. I regret that we're not going to have a hotel there, but that's the application in front of us. But going back to what I've said earlier about the contribution, I would like to put in an amendment so that in paragraph 331, which is the recommendations, that instead of the figure that we've got for the open place provision, which is £121,000 and some pennies, that instead it is the 291,000 that is also mentioned in the report. So if anyone's prepared to sort of second me that and even to seek that is acceptable thing to do with this application. But other than the public's the contribution, I think that there is a lot of merit in this application, and that obviously there will be a lot of disruption for the city centre and for my residents, but that hopefully in 3 years' time we're in a better place than we are, and that we can have a thriving centre that does have retailers in there that are offering sort of niche shops that people would be prepared to come into Durham and spend money in.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming up on Councillor Freeman's point about the value of the 106 contribution here, and I think members who have been on this committee a while have probably heard this advice before, that we can't really just change these figures materially on the hoof, if you like. I think, as Louisa set out in her presentation, the figure is consistent with how we calculated the methodology on the earlier planning application, and there is a rationale behind it in terms of the on-site improvements as well. So I think probably something Neil would agree with, Chair. I would urge any caution if members were minded to move I think the motion that Councillor Freeman was suggesting, that we only approve it subject to an enhanced amount. I think there is a clear evidence as to why we've landed on the amount we have, which has been agreed with the applicant, Chair.
Councillor Wilkes.
Yeah, I mean, if this was in my ward and I was told that Section 106 money that I was able to have some influence on, working with officers, that the portfolio holders would be able to decide on where the money went as well, and then you find out that the developer's keeping a big chunk of it, I'd probably be a bit disappointed, to be honest, that I didn't have any influence on that. And I think it's down to the portfolio holders on the Section 106 committee with officers and for the local members to decide how Section 106 money is spent. So I don't really see why it can't be conditioned that the applicant, just as anybody else, can apply for Section 106 money. Why can't they just apply for the money that we're basically giving them, which is technically taxpayers' money as part of a development ultimately, that we're just handing over for free to help them with the development that they're going to do anyway, because they can't not do it, because, as we know, they're not making any money from the site that's there. It seems disappointing that it's being suggested that we can't do that. I would actually suggest that we can, and I would support the suggestion and the recommendation from Councillor Freeman. I don't see any reason why we can't do this. If they want the money, they can apply for it the same as everybody else.
Chair, I think the difficulty we have here is, firstly, the way in which the contribution's being calculated is, clearly set out in the report. What members are now suggesting is that we sort of disregard that calculation and substitute a different one. I would suggest that's potentially unreasonable. And I think the other difficulty that members will have with this is the applicants have already got a scheme, and that scheme, in terms of the financial ask, is the same as what we're currently asking. So they have got a fallback position.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think, in fairness to David, we all want, as much as 106 as we possibly can get for our communities and to spend in the division. But however, I think what we have before us here today, and them sums are being calculated go through various stages to get to today. That was maybe a conversation which should have been had previously rather than sort of at the last minute. On the application itself, I think, credit to the applicant bringing it back in, revising it. Obviously, it's sad to lose the hotel, but like everything, everything changes in the environment that we're in. It's an uplift in the 100 or so units in the student accommodation. That's got to be a positive, because that will obviously relieve pressure on the HMOs and the amount of business what comes into Central and East as like the dedicated HMO committee. Yeah, so other than that, I've got no problem in supporting this application and moving approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. As we have a first and second for a motion to approve this application, I'd like to put it to a vote. This is without any changes to the 106 payments, so it will be the national vote which Councillor Stevens and Councillor Bowen motioned earlier. So can I have all in favour, please? Against? Carried. Is there any absentees? One, sorry. Thank you very much. Do I take it just a quick 5-minute break, or are you okay to carry on? Yeah? Right, moving on to application number 3, which is the location of land to the north of York Hill Road, Spennymoor. And I'd like to introduce Callum Harvey, who is the presenting officer.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So the third application on today's agenda is a hybrid application. It's comprising full plan permission for the erection of 45 dwellings with vehicular access, landscaping and associated infrastructure, and outline plan permission with all matters reserved for the erection of up to a further 305 dwellings with landscaping and associated infrastructure. The site is located to the north of York Hill Road on the edge of Tudor at Spennymoor. So the first slide shows the location of the site. So you've got Tudor off to the west with the wider settlement of Spennymoor sprawling off toward the southwest. So the centre of Spennymoor is just off screen to the southwest there. You've got the red line boundary, which shows the extent of the application site, and a blue line boundary for the adjacent land to the east, which is other land within the applicant's control. So this is a more zoomed in photograph, just showing the site in the context of the surrounding area. So to the north we've got a woodland belt, to the west we've got a residential estate with a well-established tree belt in between. To the south we've got a large industrial estate with York Hill Road and another well-established tree belt in between. And then to the east we've got further agricultural fields with the A167 just to the east there. So we're just flicking through the site photos. This is the first one taken from the southeast corner of the site. Looking west back toward Tudor. So the proposed housing development would be in the centre of these photographs. So this photo just shows the extent of the existing tree belt, which forms the eastern edge of Tudor. And these photographs are taken from the same location, looking north and then east, back up towards the 167. So because of the change in topography of the land to the east of the site, you will only get very small glimpsed views of this site when travelling southbound along the A167. And just some more photographs showing the existing footpath to the northwest of this site. So this is coming off of Castle Close on the existing estate. So this footpath, it's surfaced, it's lit, but it's currently a path to nowhere. So one of the footpath connections from the proposed development seeks to connect into this path, open it back up, remove any potential antisocial behaviour issues, and provide a connection into the existing estate, and then on to the centre of Tudor. So this slide shows the proposed site plan. Access will be sought from York Hill Road to the south. So following receipt of the initial application and following discussions with officers, the proposal has been amended to what is known as a hybrid application. The proposal now includes a detailed phase in the southeastern corner of the site, so that's the area sort of highlighted in yellow at the bottom end of the drawing. So this change was made so that officers have greater confidence that this site would actually deliver housing within 5 years, and this is in order to help address the county's outstanding housing needs. Officers have therefore this is because officers have noted the delayed delivery of housing on a number of outline planning permissions across the county, and we are therefore seeking for all new large-scale housing proposals to be either full or in hybrid format to enable confidence in quick build-out and delivery. So just to quickly explain the drawing on the slides, we've got access from the south, and we've got a large suds basin to the north, with some more drainage features shown in blue, the blue lines running through the centre of the site. So as a result of the change to a hybrid application, this proposal includes a detailed phase for 45 dwellings. So this includes the site access from York Hill Road to the south, and we've also got some public open space in the eastern corner. This phase also includes 7 affordable homes and 4 bungalows. So the applicant has worked proactively with officers to secure a high quality design and layout. As a result, the proposal has received no red scores during the most recent design review scoring. So this next slide shows the main landscape features across the site. The proposal includes a 20-metre wide structured landscape buffer along the eastern edge of the site, with an adjacent 9-metre buffer of public open space. So the landscape officer does not object to this approach. The proposal also includes a large linear swale running through the outline phase of the site, so that's the green area you can see running through the centre of the site there. So the drainage officer has no concerns with that approach. So one of the improvements which is proposed as part of this scheme is upgrades to the existing staggered junction to the west of this site. So this is a junction with known existing issues, and because the proposal would lead to an increase in traffic running through that junction, the applicant has offered to improve it. So not only would this help address the impacts of this scheme, it would also improve safety for pedestrians, for cyclists and motorists. These works have also undergone a Stage 1 road safety audit to ensure they are deliverable, and officers recommend that these works be secured through a planning condition. So just to show some indicative street scenes, so the image at the top shows the house types which the applicant is proposing, or a similar kind of scale massing material palette. And then the bottom image indicates sort of rough kind of streetscape and layout. And the same again, this is along the eastern site edge. So as I say, we'll be getting a structured landscape buffer and with an adjacent area of public open space. So these images are taken from the design code submitted as part of the application. So we'll have a mix of 2, 3 and 4 bed homes, including bungalows, and this mix is supported by officers. So in terms of representations, we've received 26 letters of objection from the public. This includes 2 late representations. The primary concerns are the safety of the access arrangement onto York Hill Road, increase in traffic, loss of agricultural land, impact on the amenity of neighbouring residents, overdevelopment of the wider settlement of Spennymoor given previous housing developments which have been approved, and the impact on dentist, GP surgery and school capacity. We've also received a further objection from the Campaign to Protect Rural England, who raised concerns relating to the sustainability of the site and the visual impact of the scheme on the wider landscape. In terms of consultees, we've received no objections on the amended scheme as currently presented, subject to securing conditions and 106 financial contributions where appropriate. The landscape officer has not objected following the inclusion of the 20-metre wide landscape buffer. The active travel officer no longer objects, subject to financial contributions totaling £240,000. So these would go towards improving pedestrian, cycling and bus infrastructure. And the highways officer considers the access arrangement to be acceptable, and the proposed junction improvement works, which are shown earlier on, are also considered acceptable. Just as a quick update, following publication of the officer report, we have received updated comments from the ecology officer, who has considered the updated biodiversity net gain and protected species details. So the ecology officer raises no concerns subject to the conditions which are already recommended at the bottom of the officer report. In terms of skylark mitigation, these will be secured through a legal agreement, so these would be located within the blue line boundary to the east of the site. I had on one of the earlier slides. The only other element is the ecology officer is recommending an increased biodiversity net gain monitoring fee, so the required fee would now be £6,990. So in terms of the capacity of local schools, GP and other infrastructure, so this is a key concern. It's raised often on these larger housing sites. If members were minded to grant planning permission, officers recommend a number of financial contributions be sought to mitigate those impacts, and those are set out on the screens before you. The updated biodiversity net gain monitoring fee would also need to be secured. So in total, we would be securing more than £1.6 million in contributions if this application were approved. This is in addition to the junction improvement works shown on Front Street, which I had on the earlier slide. So as mentioned in the officer report, Chair, there is a balancing act required with this application. So turning first to the harms, there would be a transformative visual impact to the landscape at a local level. And as a result, the site is not considered to be well related to the settlement in a visual sense for the purpose of Policy 6 of the County Durham Plan. The proposal would therefore conflict with Policy 6 and 10 of the County Durham Plan. However, with the mitigation measures which have been agreed with the landscape officer, in this instance, the level of impact is reduced to a moderate degree of harm. Worth noting, Chair, this is not a designated area of higher landscape value, and whilst there are local viewpoints, the site would not be clearly visible from wider long-distance viewpoints. The other harms relate to agricultural land. So the proposal would lead to the loss of 0.9 hectares of Grade 2 agricultural land. Given that this is only a small area, officers feel it would only lead to a limited degree of harm. Further to that, there'd be a loss of 14.8 hectares of Grade 3B agricultural land. Given that it's Grade 3B, which is not as valuable as Grade 2, this would lead to only a very limited degree of harm. And just to help visualise that, Chair, I've got a drawing up on the screen. This is taken from the Agricultural Land Classification Report, which came in as part of the application. So the blue corner to the south of the site is the extent of the Grade 2 land, and the remainder of the site is the Grade 3B. So turning next to the benefits of the development, the proposal would deliver new housing, including 53 affordable homes and 35 bungalows, which would lead to subsequent economic and social benefits. So these include the delivery of new housing to address the county's needs, delivery of affordable housing and bungalows, again to address identified needs, the creation of jobs during the construction period, and new footfall for local businesses once the proposed dwellings are occupied. So these benefits should be afforded significant weight in favour of the proposal. Further to that, the proposal will be delivering more than the required 10% biodiversity net gain. So just to conclude, Chair, in accordance with paragraph 11D of the NPPF, given the absence of a 5-year housing land supply, the identified adverse impacts and the identified conflicts with Policy 6 and 10 of the County Durham Plan do not significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the proposed development. Officers therefore recommend that members approve this application, subject to the completion of a Section 106 legal agreement with the updated biodiversity net gain monitoring fee, and subject to the conditions contained within the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We do have a couple of speakers today, so I'd like to ask David and Lorna Saunders, who are local residents, to speak. Can I please remind you, between the both of you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I must stress from the outset, I didn't actually oppose the application. I was a neutral representative. But there are a number of issues that still remain from reviewing the report that went to the Planning Committee. I note that the banks will not be the actual developers. What is to stop the developer himself from seeking to change the plans and conditions? We already note that the retail facility has been dropped from the plan. On local accessibility, it was commented on various establishments that were close by. To the nearest, the Coach and Horses has not been open on an active basis for some time, and the Victory Club in Tudor is closed and the property is up for sale. In that area, it also refers to, again, legal agreements to be enforced. What is the situation regarding ensuring that these are enforced? This applies equally to the affordable housing provision referred to at 137. How strong is the legal agreement? It's not unknown for developers to seek changes in the development when financial circumstances alter the viability of their scheme. One point that particularly concerned me was the proposal not to extend the 30-mile-an-hour zone up towards the Meadowfield Avenue. This has apparently been dropped and supported by the police and highways. It has been suggested that a survey indicated that the average speed along this section was 40 miles per hour. This comes as a considerable surprise to me, as I've often seen cars exceeding that, not least cars pulling out illegally from Meadowfield and turning right down into York Hill Road. I would suggest that any positive survey would suggest a much higher speed limit is achieved, with some vehicles continuing to exceed the 30-mile-an-hour limit when they enter the zone. We witnessed a near collision with one such offender with a fire engine exiting the rear of the station on Blues and Twos, and it was only by luck and circumstances that a collision was avoided. I think the decision needs to be reconsidered. I'm still concerned about the drainage and flooding situation. The proposal seems to suggest there would be no increase in the risk within the site and elsewhere, which presumably means the development just to the west of the site where I live. Considering the condition of part of the site abutting Castle Close, after heavy rain it can be seen to be waterlogged. And
1 minute remaining.
And I can't see how building in that area would help the situation. Clearly, the Northumbrian Water are not very happy with the drainage situation because of the conditions they impose. So I think, all in all, I think we need to be assured that the conditions, especially the legal arrangements, are legally binding. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, David. Can I invite James Seasbury to talk now on behalf of Banks?
Good afternoon, Chair and members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is James Seabury. I'm a Principal Planner at Banks Property. I'm also joined by other members of our project team. Banks Property is part of the Banks Group, a family-owned business established in County Durham 50 years ago that operates across the North East and Yorkshire. The company has operated across various sectors, including mining, renewable energy, property development and house building. Banks Property has worked alongside Durham County Council to achieve planning permission on a number of schemes across the county, including developments such as Mount Oswald in Durham City, Darlington Road in Barnard Castle, Pelton Lane in Pelton and Benthouse Lane in Gilesgate. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak today in support of our hybrid planning application to develop new family homes at Tudor. I support your Planning Officer's Committee report and note the robust assessment that's been undertaken by your officers, which confirms that the site is suitable for new housing. The proposals are for a hybrid scheme, 45 homes in detail and up to 305 homes in outline. The proposals include a mix of market and affordable houses and bungalows. The delivery of this site will contribute towards delivering much needed housing in the short term. The objections from local residents are noted, and we have addressed a number of these points within our application submission, as have your officers in the report in front of you. We have worked with council officers to revise our proposals based on the feedback provided, including the first phase of housing being converted from outline to detail. It should be noted there are no amenity, ecological, environmental or technical objections to the proposals from any of the statutory consultees or the council's planning officers. Our York Hill Road development would make a valuable contribution to the local economy through construction costs, direct and indirect employment during the construction phase, as well as developer contributions that will support new and existing infrastructure within Tudor and the surrounding area. This includes up to 74 full-time equivalent direct new jobs created during the construction phase, an additional 104 full-time equivalent indirect jobs created during the construction phase, once constructed and occupied an additional £4.6 million retail spending each year to local businesses, around £1.1 million each year in council tax payments to Durham County Council. In addition to the above economic benefits, we are also providing significant contributions towards improved education provision, the NHS, active travel, open space and sports infrastructure in the local area. This includes a contribution of almost £170,000 to the NHS towards increasing GP surgery capacity and over £700,000 towards education within the local area. The scheme is also providing social and environmental benefits, including 10% bungalows, 15% affordable housing, a locally equipped area of play on site, energy efficient homes with electric vehicle charging points provided as standard, a sustainable urban drainage system, including a multifunctional linear park, and delivery of over 10% biodiversity net gain. The proposal will provide a high-quality development. We believe it's in line with both local and national planning policies and will contribute social, economic and environmental benefits to the local area. In accordance with your officer's recommendation, we would therefore respectfully request the proposals are supported and planning permission be granted. Myself or other members of the project team who are here today would be pleased to answer any questions you may have on our application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, James. Callum, can you respond to some of the comments David made, please?
Yep, Chair. So there was a number of points made, just to quickly flick through them. As mentioned in the officer report, the current intention is that the applicant would not be developing this site. If another developer came on board, as expected, the planning permission could be varied, although officers would naturally ensure that the quality of the scheme would not be diminished at that point in time. In terms of the retail unit being removed, so whilst it was included in the original submission, it was actually removed at the request of officers. The reason being, we would prefer to see improvement of existing infrastructure to enable easier access to the existing shop on the estate to the west of the site. In terms of the Coach and Horses and the Victory Club now being closed, whilst I acknowledge that, it doesn't actually lead to a change in the recommendation, nor does it lead to a change in the assessment by officers. In terms of the enforcement of the contents of the Section 106 and also the planning conditions, so just to give some assurance to the public, that is strong. So we have a number of officers who focus on those matters, and we have lots of experience in enforcing those matters on various sites across the county. If a viability case were to be presented at a later date, when another developer gets on board, officers will look at it at that point in time. But again, naturally, officers would not want to see the quality of the scheme diminished in that scenario. In terms of the concerns relating to highway safety, so Dave Battensby, our highways officer, is here today. If there's any queries on that, we've also got Alex Puddick from our active travel team. If there's any queries on sustainability, such as removal of the retail unit, for example. But the application has been supported by a suite of documents to address highway safety and sustainability matters. And then finally, in terms of drainage, so I recognise there has been existing flooding issues at the site, but the proposal would lead to betterment compared to the existing situation. In terms of Northumbrian Water, they did not object to the application, and their recommended condition is normal for outline or hybrid applications. Hope that helps, Chair, but any queries, happy to help further.
Thank you very much. I'd like to open up to questions from the members, please. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was a question for David from Highways. The chap from the village mentioned about a speed reduction. I just wasn't aware which road it was and the ins and outs of it, if David could explain. And then second to that was in relation to the school provision in the area. Again, probably for you, David, would be where's the school located at, and where would the crossing points be for the school, for any children of school age coming off the site when it's fully built out? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the speed limit reduction, it was on York Hill Road, so basically where Meadowfield Avenue connects with York Hill Road from the industrial estate, heading from there southwest.
Sorry, David. Callum, could you actually do the, just so we know, if that's not mind, if you do your infrared, yeah.
Apologies, Chair, I'll try and find that again. Right. This section, David?
Yes, it's that section there from Meadowfield Avenue heading southwest towards the village. So that was carefully considered at the early stages, and when we looked at it, it was determined it wouldn't be credible because of the road environment, and the properties of the development are going to be set so far back. It's not going to have the self-enforcing requirement that we look at for speed limit reductions, and it's also indicative of the existing speed limit, which lacks credibility and results in higher speeds. So we felt that could actually lead to a worse road safety issue, having a non-credible speed limit, than leaving it as it is, and that was backed up by the views of Durham Constabulary, who use that road quite a lot as well, having the road policing unit in Spennymoor. With regards to the routes to the school, this is one of the aspects we looked at in terms of the signalisation of what's locally known as 5-lane ends. The signalisation scheme incorporates pedestrian routes across the junction, controlled by the signals, and there's currently a school crossing patrol on the south side of that junction. So this provides a much more controlled and safer opportunity for children and pedestrians as well as cyclists to cross this busy road, built in by pedestrian phases on the signals. So that was a major improvement. I hope that answers the question.
Councillor Wilkes.
Thanks, Chair. I don't know if you can flick back another. Was it the very first image that has the actual layout for the proposed housing, which is that one? Is that the old original proposal? Because there's other images from more recent which show the entrance in the centre of where the proposed houses are. So I'm just trying to understand, to start with, is that what we're actually being asked to approve as the full application, or not? Because there's other images from later on the website which show a different part of the development being proposed as the first element of the development. And depending on the answer, I've got a question on that, Chair.
Yep. So this image that's shown, I'll just double check, is it the right one? So I believe that is the right image taken off of revision B of the proposed detailed layout. So the detailed element shows the site access just to the southwest corner of the detailed phase. But when you look at it on this slide, I'll just stand up.
It shows the entrance in the middle.
Chair. So the image that I had before is just showing the yellow zone. And then this is the wider site. So this application's in two parts. So the detailed element is in yellow, but if members were minded to grant permission today, it would be for the additional 305 dwellings off to the west and to the north of that detailed phase as well.
Sorry. Chair, I am confused here because the image you showed before shows the existing housing development to the left of the entranceway on the other image. So if you look down the bottom there, it's definitely the yellow zone.
Yeah, so it's probably hard to tell on the screens, but this area here is shown, it's a different shade of yellow.
No, I appreciate that. It's just that when you look online at the actual image that's there, there's different images of different designs for different full layouts.
Yeah.
So the reason I'm asking this, Chair, is because now that I know that that's what it is, so as you enter into the estate, the first house on the right is down as number 1. And the parking for that house isn't at the entrance to the property. It's not next to the back garden. It's behind the back garden. And every single, practically, parking space on that main entrance route into this 350 house estate, every single one is tandem parking. And what I mean by that is your cars are parked behind each other on the driveway. In one case, 4 parking spaces behind each other on the main drag into this estate. Now, we've got a parking SPD, which is very clear that the predominance of an estate should not be cars parked behind each other. You should have parking next to each other, because with the best will in the world, when Johnny gets up in the morning to go off to his job, he's not going to get the other rest of the house to move around their cars. And the reality is that we've seen it on every estate in the country that's built. You build it like this and you end up with cars just all over the main drag on the main road. And that's the problem here that I've got, is that 16 out of 20 parking spaces on the main route into this big estate are all tandem parking spaces. Some of them nowhere near where the front door of the property is. And even when you then turn left into the estate, the next property, it's 4 tandem parking spaces behind each other. With the best will in the world, there's no way that those grass verges are going to still be there within the first few months. And we can't do anything to restrict this. We can't put double yellow lines down, because it'll be 3 or 4 years before this estate's adopted. So what I want to know is, from Highways, why are we allowing something which is in breach of our SPD? And secondly, what are we going to do to make sure people can, and ambulances and fire service and all the rest, can actually get into this estate? Because at the moment it's not meeting our normal design recommendations.
Dave, could you just answer some of the questions for us, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, with regard to parking provision, our main aim is to ensure that necessary quantum of residents and visitor parking is provided, which in itself, it's a difficult task with development. But on this development, we've actually achieved that quantum. However, like most things on these sort of applications, there's different demands on what we can achieve across many disciplines, and therefore we have to make compromises. We therefore work within the framework provided by the guidance provided in the SPD. And one of the aim of the authority and the Building for Life initiative is to create developments which are pleasant places to live and avoid car-dominated streets. Therefore, it's often necessary to utilise double-length drives to enable the tree-lined streets and the green spaces to the front of properties, which our design team are very keen on. There's also an advantage that in providing double-length drives, as it retains the opportunity for expansion of parking spaces in the future, if the residents decide to do that. For this development phase, there's a good compromise on double-length drives. We've got 25 out of the 45 units having double-length drives, and that's considered to be compliant with the SPD. The particular ones where you've mentioned about the 4 in a row, the property only requires 3 parking spaces, of which the garage is 1, so there's actually an additional space there. That's a bonus. But in terms of access into the estate, the road is actually slightly wider than our 5.5 metres, even if a vehicle did park on one side of the road, there would still be ample space for emergency services or delivery vehicles to get in. So it's considered to be quite acceptable from that aspect. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Madison?
Yeah, sorry. Councillor Madison, Spennymoor Division. When I talk about Spennymoor, I talk about Tudor Division as well. Got two questions to ask. The first one, this retail that's now been removed, can I ask the officer exactly what distance now you would expect residents on this estate to travel to the nearest shop? Tudor Main Street is not very good, one shop, and another small retail unit, I think it's a butcher's. The other question I would ask from the highways is what consideration they've actually given to the exits from the police custody suite down into the main street of Tudor, and also the very busy fire station that serves the whole of County Durham, in that there's already been comments made with regard to parking on the York Hill Road being an obstacle for the fire services. And I would like to know what consideration for this heavy traffic from those two areas, as well as what I anticipate would be heavy traffic from this development going down to the corner junction there at the bottom of York Hill Road to Durham Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Can you just answer the first question about the shops, please?
Yeah, Chair. It's a good question. Sustainability has been a key consideration on a number of big housing sites over the last few years, and that has been the case with this site as well. So in the officer report, it's paragraph 105 onwards through till about 115. Officers have set out the current situation about the sustainability of the site, and paragraph 105 in particular lists the distances to the nearest facilities and services. So we do have a small convenience store and a hot food takeaway on Tweed Road. It's about 730 metres to the west of the site, but I acknowledge pretty much everything else is beyond the 800 metre standard. So as a result of that, officers have been discussing how to address that with the applicant, and we have Alex Puddick here as well. I'll ask Alex to come in a bit as well. And given the package of mitigation measures which are on the table, on balance, I feel this is a sustainable location for development. Do you want to chip in, Alex?
Thanks, Callum. When the first site came in, we did have our concerns about its location in the grand scheme of things, particularly where it is located in ease of access to facilities and amenities across a broad range: health, retail, education. And then we've worked proactively with the applicant to try and address those mitigations as part of the technical submission. They have undertaken a robust audit of the quality of key routes, both into Tudor High Street but also into Spennymoor itself. That has flagged a range of potential improvements that could be addressed to alleviate and improve the overall quality and attractiveness of the routes for those users wishing to travel by active modes. We've also looked at the role that active travel can play to and from the site to local bus stops, such as those located along Meadowfield Avenue, which would benefit from an improvement to, as part of the first mile, last mile improvement to cater for wider onwards public transport trips to and from on the higher frequency corridor between Durham and Durham along the 167. So as Callum has raised, we've taken a pragmatic view to try and work with the applicant to try and address those shortfalls. That is reflected in both the 106 contribution that has been put towards a range of potential improvements, as well as the sizable unquantified 278 scheme on York Hill Road itself, which, as my colleague addressed, is delivering a massive benefit in terms of addressing the lack of currently controlled crossing provision that will benefit a significant proportion of users, particularly those with poor mobility and those which are vulnerable, such as young children. So it's something that we looked at on the round, and we tried to alleviate, and it's something that we will continue to work with the local community to try and address in the future when that funding is available. Thank you.
Councillor Madison.
As a follow-up question, can I ask if there is any double yellow lines planned to be on that road, especially where the fire station comes out onto that main road?
Thanks, Chair. There isn't a proposal for double yellow lines. However, there is going to be a protected right turn provided into the estate with splitter islands, which would make parking there basically very, very difficult, if not impossible. So it's not felt to be necessary at that point. And as far as further in, where the existing estate is, if there is a problem there, then that's an existing issue which can't be resolved by this application. But the access from the fire station was something that we did take into account when we looked at all of this, and hence one of my comments which will get ironed out with the detail going through under one of the conditions is the road width will be actually slightly wider than what's shown on the plan, so that it can get past the splitter islands under blues and twos. So the fire station and everything was taken into account and considered carefully. I hope that answers the question on that. Thank you.
Any further questions? Can we please move it on to debate, please? Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a good proposal. 350 houses, the county needs them. It's very close to a lot of jobs there with the industrial estate opposite. There's another industrial estate behind it. I mean, there's £1.6 million worth of 106 contributions, which I think the county will appreciate as well. There's been talk of the local pubs struggling to stay open. I think, potentially another 700 people to the area could help. The Coach and Horses will be a long-lasting business. Maybe that succeeds in the future, and same for the pubs in Tudor as well. So I'd like to recommend this for approval, please, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkes.
Thanks, Chair. I appreciate that committee is probably going to approve this. It is a reasonable location for development. I'm not supporting it, though, on the grounds of highway safety. It's simply not. If anyone looked at the design of that entrance into that estate, there's not a blind man on a galloping horse would see it's not safe. But obviously, we are where we are. I won't be voting for it. Somebody should be seriously looking at these developments and putting it so that we don't end up with people's front gardens being ripped up, so we don't end up with entrance roads blocked so ambulances can't get in and fire engines. It just seems nonsensical that someone would bring such a design and that we would allow it.
Any more debate? Yeah. Councillor Madison.
I would ask what benefits this development offers to Spennymoor. Spennymoor and Tudor are being targeted to meet County Durham's housing needs, not for the benefit of Spennymoor residents. The Section 106 controls do not mitigate for the loss of this land and habitats. Every new development has offered sports contributions. 3 recent developments are still work in progress. This is a 4th, and over 1,000 new homes, with many more new homes over the last 20 years. Each time I've spoken against these, we don't want or need any more new homes. We already have brownfield sites at Merrington Lane prepared and are waiting for a developer. Why couldn't this development be there rather than on open countryside? We have no housing shortage in Spennymoor and Tudor divisions. This site was originally advertised as a commuter development for Durham, not for Spennymoor residents, where we do not have the infrastructure to cope with the new developments. We have a lack of adequate road and parking systems. Roads are congested, and we have a lack of doctors, dentists and schools. York Hill Road, despite what officers are saying, is narrow and
Councillor
it's a
Madison?
major route.
Councillor Madison, is this part of the debate or is it just a predetermined script to put your case forward?
I'm putting my case for Spennymoor and Tudor.
So it's not part of the debate then?
Yeah.
Councillor Wilkes?
So I'd just like to clarify, as a member of a planning committee, we're not supposed to predetermine the application in advance of the meeting. Can I confirm, is this a pre-written speech? And if such, should the councillor not have attended separately and spoke against the application rather than writing something in advance of the application and then speaking against it?
Councillor Wilkes, that's exactly what I just brought up. Thank you very much. Is there anything more to go on to debate? Please, thank you.
I'll second Councillor Stevenson's proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Bone. As we have a motion to go forward to approve this application, I'd like to have a vote, and could we have a vote in favour, please? 7. Vote against? 1. And anyone abstain? 1. Thank you very much. That concludes today's business. Thank you for all your attendance and have a great afternoon. Thank you very much.